Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Lit 11. So in this video, we will do a lab demo on how to set up a Linux virtual machine on Azure cloud. So in my channel, I had posted some videos on AWS. So I thought of starting a video series on Azure, and then thought of starting with the virtual machines. So going forward, I'll be posting videos mainly on the Azure cloud where we can touch upon each of the services and we will do a lab demo on those, right? So for today's video, we will see how to launch a Linux virtual machine on Azure. Probably I will be setting up a Ubuntu virtual machine, and we will also see how to set up a nginx web server on the Ubuntu machine. So let's get started. So now what is a prerequisite for this lab? Basically, you would need to have a Azure subscription. Either it should be a free subscription or it should be a pay as you go subscription. So I assume that people who is going to try this lab, you already have an account, or otherwise you need to sign up for a new account with either a free or a pay as you go subscription. So without further delay, we will directly get into the lab demo here. So let me just go into the Azure portal, which is portal.azure.com. I have logged into my Azure portal using portal.azure.com, and I have logged into my subscription account. So now let us go ahead and create a virtual machine. So you can see this is the home screen where you have multiple services here. So I'm going to click virtual machines. And then in the bottom, you can see there is a create button. So let me go ahead and click create. So we have three options here: Azure Virtual Machine, Azure Virtual Machine with preset configuration, more VMs and related solutions. So I'm going to just select Azure Virtual Machine. Okay, so you can see here, my subscription is a pay as you go. So I can just leave it like that. And resource group. So whenever you are creating any new resource, it will ask you to create a resource group. Maybe for the first time, you can create a resource group, and later on you can point it to the same resource group. Or if you want, we can create a resource group separately as well. So now let me go ahead and create a resource group. So as you can see here, a resource group is a collection of resources that share the same lifecycle, permissions, and policies, right? So whatever resources is part of a particular resource group, they have the same lifecycle, permissions, and policies. So let me go ahead and create a new resource group. I'm going to name it as a test resource group. Okay, now it's asking for the virtual machine name. So I'm going to say maybe it is a Ubuntu web server. Okay, so I will be launching a Ubuntu machine. In that, I'm going to set up a nginx web server. So region, probably I can leave it as US East US. It is basically the place where we are going to host our resource and where the data centers are available. And regarding the availability options, so I can actually select an availability zone and we can point it to a particular availability zone. Or if at all we don't need any specific availability for the particular resource, then we can go ahead and select no infrastructure redundancy required. So since ours is just a lab demo and we are going to shut down the VM post the lab demo, so I will just select no infrastructure redundancy required. Okay, so security type, I can just leave it to the default option, trusted launch virtual machines. And what is the operating system image from which we are going to launch the instance. So you can see the various images that is available here. So let me select this Ubuntu server 22.04 LTS. Okay, so that will be the image I will select. And what would be the hardware that is going to come along with the image? It is going to be one virtual CPU and 1 gigabytes of memory, right? And it is also giving a cost estimate for that. But as long as we are going to shut down the resource, then we are not going to worry about the charges. Okay, so this is on the size. And now coming to the authentication type. So how are we going to authenticate to this Ubuntu system? So it is going to be either it can be via the SSH public key or it can be via the password. So generally the key authentication is considered to be secure. So I'm going to select SSH public key. and what is the user with which we can log into this system. So it's going to be, I mean, by default, it is saying as Azure user. If at all you want to give any other name, you can actually give a different username also. So I can actually leave it to Azure user here. And I will also say generate a new key pair with a RSA SSH format. And by default, it is populating a key here. So I'm going to just use the same key name. And in regard to the inbound port rules, right? So by default, we have to open the SSH port because it's a Linux system and we have to log in via the SSH. And since I'm going to set up an nginx web server on this, I will be opening the port HTTP as well, right? So primarily we are opening two ports here. One is SSH to log into the machine, and one is HTTP port 80, since everyone has to access the nginx web server, right? That will be running on the port 80. Now let me click the next option here. So what is the hard disk that is going to come with the instance? It is going to be a 30 gigabytes hard disk, and it will be a premium SSD. So I'm just going to leave all this with the default values. And let me click next here. And the virtual network, here it is going to tell you in its subnet, the instance is going to be launched, and we want a new public IP as and when the instance is launched. So all these things, I'm going to leave it as default. And here you can see a warning where it is saying that the SSH port is open for the outside world, right? But we'll have to restrict the access only from my system. So once the instance is launched, we can go ahead and edit the network security group. So rest everything, I will leave it as a default here. Let me click next. Okay, so if at all you want to enable auto shutdown, you can enable it here. I'll just go with all the default options. So click next. So if at all you want to add some bootstrapping script, you can actually add it here in the custom data section. So let me click next. I will give it a name, Ubuntu Web Server. Click next. Okay, so it is just giving an approximate charges for this instance. Okay, so it has done the validation. You can see the message validation passed, and now we can go ahead and create the instance. Or in Azure terms, it will be the virtual machine. So let's go ahead and create the virtual machine. And here, before creation, it is actually asking you to download the private key, because we need this private key to log into the instance. And while launching the instance, the public key will be stored on the instance, right? So let me go ahead and download the private key. Okay, so you can see the message. It is initializing the template deployment to the resource group. So it is in the process of creating the virtual machine. Okay, so while it is creating the virtual machine, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use putty to log into the Linux system. You see the key format, it is basically downloaded as a .pem, right? But if you are using putty to log into the Linux machine, you should have the key pair in the .ppk format, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a utility called puttygen, and I'm going to convert this PEM keys to the .ppk so that we would be able to log into the machine using putty, right? So let me just load this. We just check what is the key that it has used. I'll open the puttygen and let me load the private key, whatever we had downloaded, that is the Ubuntu web server underscore key .pem format. And let me click save the private key. I will say Ubuntu web ppk, right? So that would be our key in the .ppk format. Let me save this. Okay. So now we have created the private key in the .ppk and we can use that while logging into the instance, right? So now you can see that the instance deployment is successfully completed, right? Now we can go ahead and log in to the instance. So first I will go to the resource. I will click go to resource here. Here you can see the details, the various attributes about the instance. So it is basically a Linux Ubuntu system with a version 22.04, and it is having one virtual CPU and there is 1 GB of memory. And this is the public IP that we need to use in order to log into the instance. Okay. So now let me copy this public IP and we will test the connectivity to the port 22, the SSH port. Okay, you can see here we are able to connect to the SSH port. So we should be good. But as I was telling you, we have to edit the security group, the network security group, in order to allow SSH access only from my IP address, my laptop's IP address. But currently it has the security group is open for the complete world. So let's go ahead and edit it. So in order to edit the network security group, I will click networking here. I will click the network settings. So this is the network interface. So here you can see the network security group. I'm going to click that. And this is a rule for SSH where you can see that the source is any. So anybody from the internet who has access to this IP address or who knows this IP address, you would be able to log into the virtual machine, right? So I do not want to allow that. So I will select the rule and then the source instead of any, I am going to change it as my IP address so that only from my IP, I would be able to log into this Ubuntu machine, right? So let me go ahead and save the rules. Okay, you can see here now it has updated the source as my IP address. So now let me go back and we will try to log into the virtual machine. So this is my Ubuntu virtual machine and I will copy the public IP address. I will go to putty and let us upload our private keys that we converted in the .ppk format. So this is my private key, right? Ubuntu web ppk. Okay, so now it is asking me for the username. So what is the username? It is Azure user, right? So while we are launching the instance, the username was Azure user. So enter. Okay, now we are inside the Ubuntu system. Okay, now let me just increase the font a little bit. So now we have logged into the Ubuntu server within Azure. Now let us go ahead and see how to set up a nginx web server on this machine. So first thing, I'm going to switch it to the root user. Then I'm going to use the command -get update where we can update the packages on this machine. Okay, I think it is still installing the packages. Okay, so it has completed the nginx installation. Now let us go ahead and start the nginx service with the command service nginx start. Okay, so nginx has been started. Now let us check the status. We can see that it is active and running, right? And since we have opened the port 80 and nginx is also installed, so we should be able to connect to the port 80. So let us verify that. So let me take the IP address. I'll do a telnet, the IP port 80. You can see it is listening on the port 80. Now we will see if we are able to get the response from the nginx web server when we are hitting this IP address on the web browser. So again, let me copy this IP and I will put it on the web browser. Okay, great. You can see the team. We are able to access the nginx web page. Okay, so this is a a simple method. How do you launch a Ubuntu virtual machine in Azure and quickly install your nginx web server? Open the appropriate ports in the network security group. In our case, we open the port 22 for the server access and open port 80 for the nginx web access. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. So team, my next video will be on how do you set up a Windows virtual machine on Azure. So like that, I will keep posting multiple videos related to the various Azure services. Right? So please be on the lookout for my next video. And thank you for patiently listening to this video. And I will meet you all in my next video.